This, my friends, is the Pissaladiere, as fun to eat as it is to say. Oh my gosh. Luca the Legato. Do you like Pissaladiere? Do you know what he does love? He loves roasted peppers. You're welcome. They're good for dogs. There is, I don't know, 1/3 of an inch deep of the most incredible seasoned batch of caramelized onions that I could ever teach you how to make. Roasted peppers strewn about, a few anchovies for saltiness and piquancy, bitter black olives for contrast, sweet, salty, bitter, sour. Yes, there's a little bit of vinegar in those onions as well. All on a piece of puff pastry cooked to a crisp. This is what you want to make, and I'm going to show you how. So the first step when you're making pissaladière is to make your crust. Now, if you want to make homemade puff pastry, I'm not going to stop you. But I do use store-bought brands, and here's why. A store-bought puff pastry is not ideal for really elegant French pastry, but it's perfect for making a tart that is loaded with caramelized onions and lots of other seasonings. It's got big, bold flavors, and we're gonna cook it between 2 sheet pans so it's nice and flat and crispy. And because of that, I don't need to use anything fancier than something that comes out of my grocer's freezer. You know what I mean? So those boxes come with 2 sheets of puff pastry that are about, I don't know, 10 inches square. So you can, make 1 tart, or you can make 2 tarts. I cut them into like 1.5 or 2-inch squares or triangles, some attractive shape before serving them so everyone can sort of eat them bite-sized. So you can do this twice, or if you have like really big pans, you may be able to get 2 side by side. But the idea is put the sheet of puff pastry on here, stick this other pan on top of it, right? So it's sort of weighting it down. See what I'm doing here? Here, come on down. Take a look. Yeah, there you go. See what I'm doing? And I'm sandwiching that in between it, and I'm gonna throw it into a 350-degree oven. Well, I take that back. A 375-degree oven. And just open up your oven, slide this in. Boy, my oven needs to get cleaned. And let that bake. And I'll let that bake for 20 to 25 minutes, and I'll check it. I want it nice and brown on both sides. While that is baking, we're going to cut our onions. Super, super simple. And the reason that we're gonna cut our onions is that we're gonna caramelize a ton of them. You're gonna want 6-7 cups of thinly sliced onions. You can do this on a mandolin if you like. I just find onion cutting so easy, I usually don't. And you don't need them perfectly uniform, which is a reason why a lot of us use a mandolin. And when you get to the end, you can just tip it over and cut it like this. We're just gonna caramelize big piles of these along with some herbs, a little bit of tomato paste, barest little drop of vinegar, and we're gonna make a beautiful caramelized onion to smear all across our tart. And this is eaten room temperature, not warm, but you also don't refrigerate it. So I kind of assemble it at the last minute. Even if I make my tart blanks ahead of time, like the night before, and keep them, I'll gently crisp them to get them warm, and then if I refrigerate my onions, I'll heat those up to get them warm, let them cool again to room temperature, and spread them. I'm gonna chop a whole bunch more onions. A word about how many onions to caramelize. Onions come in all different shapes and sizes. I have some yellow ones, I have some white ones, I have some big ones, I have some small ones. Generally, for each sort of 12-inch tart, like the one that you saw there, I will do about 2.5 pounds of onions, half a 5-pound bag. And, if you have a couple tablespoons or a half cup even of leftover caramelized onions, because maybe you don't like big piles of caramelized onions on this like I do, just put them in your fridge. They're great on hamburgers, hot dogs. They're great as a topping for a sandwich. Throw them in an omelet the next morning. You're gonna have plenty. You can never have enough caramelized onions on hand. You know what I'm saying? So I've got my 2.5 pounds of onions sliced. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna tie a little bouquet garni of rosemary and thyme, and I'm going to cook my rosemary and thyme bouquet garni with my onions when I caramelize them. It just makes it so much easier. I get all the flavor in there, and like a lot of little leaves of the thyme are gonna pop off in there, which is exactly what I want. It's just faster and easier and a more delicious way to deal with seasoning this with rosemary and thyme than to pick off all of those leaves and put them in there and, you know, all the rest. I'll use 2 cloves of garlic or 1 really big one. This is like the size of my thumb. And I always make sure that I pass my garlic through a microplane because I want the flavor of the garlic, but I don't want chunks of garlic, right? And there we have it. And I'm just gonna rest that on my board like that. And then at the end, right when the onions are done caramelizing, I'll add the garlic so that the heat from the onions cooks them and makes them sweet, and just stir it all up. I also have I have 2 tablespoons of tomato paste that I've loosened with 2 or 3 tablespoons of wine. You can use a little apple juice, some apple juice with a little bit of vinegar, whatever you like in there. I had some wine left over from entertaining, and so I just loosened that up. That's gonna season the onions as well when they are caramelizing. And so we'll get those cooking with some oil and get them nice and yummy and toasty. So I've got about a 1/4 cup of olive oil in there on a medium heat. And yes, I preheated my pan, and we're just gonna let those saute for a little while. I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of salt to draw out the moisture. They will reduce by quite a large amount in terms of volume. Whoops, a little bit of skin there. We're just gonna let those cook. So those have been cooking now for like, I don't know, 3 minutes, 4 minutes? They're not caramelized, you can see they're just soft. If you had them in really, really hot oil, your pan would be too hot, the oil would be too hot, you'd start burning them. We want these to slowly caramelize. They take a little while. You can use the water trick, which is where you add a 1/4 cup or so of water to this and let them wilt, and then the water evaporates and they caramelize. I find that textural, it's great for onion soup. It isn't great for this. I like the texture better when I go slowly and just let them caramelize. This is still on just above a medium heat, and believe me, once they wilt and the water evaporates, the natural water that's in them, these will start getting really, really nice and brown. So these have been cooking for about 22 minutes. Whoa, slippery. But it's good to have these cheap supermarket baking sheets. And there is our blank. Lovely. Perfect color, nice and golden brown. And the reason, for those of you that have never worked with puff pastry before, store-bought or otherwise, the reason that we had a pan on top of a pan, and some people like to put a weight on top, get it really, really flat, is that I want to make sure that it doesn't rise. I don't want some big puffy rolly thing. I am gonna put this back in the oven for a couple more minutes just because the center's a little soft. I want the center, which is a little blonde, to be as dark as the corners, which is more like darker honey. Another 5 minutes. Meanwhile, it's been about, I don't know, 12, 14 minutes. on our onions, you can see that they're getting browner. You just want to keep tossing them. We'll let those all just keep wilting. Grab my little fork here. These are going to be perfect. And they've almost completely given up their moisture, which is why they're starting to caramelize. Some of the ones in the middle still haven't, but we're very, very close. You gotta watch your flame too. You know, I'm like a smidge over medium. Once all the liquid, I mean, you can't see it, but there's like steam. You can hear a lot of sizzling, and you can see a lot of pale, you know, glassy onions. But the ones in the bottom are starting to caramelize, and when we see that, we know that we're almost rid of all of our liquid. When it really starts moving along, that's when we want to make sure we turn the heat down a little bit. We still want it hot enough to caramelize onions, but we really, really don't want to burn them. We want to go nice and slow. We don't want any carbonized onion flavor. Nice, sweet, caramelized onions. By the way, 5 more minutes in that oven. And obviously it's darker on the outside, but you can see how the center is nice and golden brown. I don't want to go much further on that. It's nice and toasty on the bottom as well. We're just going to let this cool before we make our tart. All right, now you want to see what I mean when I say once all the moisture is evaporated? Look at this. That's what we want to see. Really nice caramelized onion. Yes, this took 20 to 22 minutes to get to this over a medium heat. But you know, I did other things. I hung out, I listened to some tunes. Anyway, the point is that if you use the water method, you'll caramelize in 12 minutes. But at the end of the day, what's going to happen is you're not going to have these great separate onion strands. You're not going to have the same texture. Anyway, I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to get rid of this bouquet garni. Remember that garlic? We're just going to spread that around. Oh, I can smell that. Just give that a couple tosses to spread it around a little more. I've already seasoned these with salt. The heat from the onions will turn that garlic sweet as pie. I'm going to add my tomato paste that I mixed with the wine. And I'm going to add a little bit of syrupy, delicious, aged balsamic vinegar, the good stuff. Very syrupy, but I'm probably adding, I don't know, a teaspoon in there, maybe even less. And I'm doing it in the hot pan on the burner that I caramelized the onions with, because the residual heat from the pan and the onions is gonna turn that garlic sweet and cook through. I don't want to caramelize any of that tomato, but the heat, you see that steam that's coming up? That's a little bit of that wine evaporating. We have this gorgeous onion mixture that still is nice and separate. Those onion threads are nice and separate, but have all of that brown caramelized flavor. And now we can just let that cool and we'll assemble our tart. So while the onions are cooling, and before I clean my stove, I have this beautiful red bell pepper. And I'm just gonna stick that in the corner there, and I'm gonna roast it. And then I'm gonna peel it when it's ready, cut it into very thin strips and use it to decorate my tart, along with some olives and anchovies. This is what makes the famous Pissaladiere of southern France, Provence, so wildly famous. Is that wonderful mixture of sweet and salty and bitter. It's just incredible. So after about 3-4 minutes of every side, I just kept turning it. It's nice and blackened, so time to peel this. So here's the deal. I have this beautiful charred pepper. Do not rinse it and clean the blackened skin off under running water. Why? All the roasty, toasty flavor you work so hard to get on the pepper will go down the drain. What I do is I use a paper toweling, and I literally can just peel off the skin, and I do it while it's still warm. Okay, I don't have to put it into a bag or into a bowl with plastic wrap on top of it, and I just keep peeling that skin off and rinsing the skin down the drain. And I do it, that's right, Luca does it the same way. He loves roasted peppers. The idea is do this over the sink, right? Let all that black stuff, the skin, go down, and then you'll have a nice clean roasted pepper. It's the easiest thing in the whole world, and it'll taste roasty and toasty. You put a paper towel down or a dirty cloth maybe that you've been working with, and just split the pepper down those natural lines. Sometimes it comes in 3s, sometimes it comes in 4s, but I just take these petals, and when they're down here, just cut a flat edge off of them, and you'll see that you just have this beautiful charred pepper that still has that smoky char on the skin. And don't get into analysis paralysis about little bits of skin that didn't come off. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? And then all we want to do, take off that rounded part on each side and just make nice thin strips. Now, I don't know, what have I got, like 15, 16 here? They're not all the same size. Some are longer than others. But I take this trim and I just set it to the side because I am probably, let me just show you this again, just laying the pepper flat, just cut across so that you can get nice thin strips. You're gonna have enough trim left over that you can put a little baggie in again with those onions. Delicious for an omelet the next day. Now we have all of these delicious strips. Not gonna lie, I mean, this is pretty cool. You know, a marble plate, a wooden plate. I like the marble plate for this because it's still easy to cut. It looks better against something paler in color. This is my bowl of those onions, so fabulous. Just start out with 2 big, 3 decent sized scoops. And just start spreading it to the edge with an eye towards making it, I don't know, about 1/3 of an inch deep. Bet you didn't think that we need so many of those onions. Well, this is essentially an onion tart. I happen to like it with the roasted pepper, and I'm just filling in those. I want this wall to wall, no visible crust. Equal in depth all over the whole thing. I mean, look at that. Now, I have about 3/4 of a cup to a cup of caramelized onions left. Like I said, you will always have a reason to have caramelized onions, or be glad you have caramelized onions in your refrigerator. And then what you're gonna wanna do is find some of your longer strips and make 3 X's across there. And you can do that. Let me find another long one. There we go. Right? Or you can just scatter the peppers all across. And that's my preferred way. And the reason that I stopped doing the more formal presentation was, well, just for that reason. It looked too formal. And you'll see when it comes to the rest of my decor on this really simple holiday entertaining tart, perfect for Christmas night, for New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, a cocktail party. If you notice, I've put the entire pepper on there. And then I have my anchovy. And some people like, they like anchovies. Some people, they don't like anchovies. What I've learned to do, and these are beautiful anchovies from Cantabria, is just sort of lay them across, sliced very thin, so that there's a little bit of anchovy with each bite. And we're also going to put some olives on here. That's the bitter part. The anchovies are the salty part. But see where we are so far? That's coming together beautifully. All right, so I also like to put on a little parsley. Remember, we have all that thyme and rosemary flavor literally in the onions. I don't need lots. I mean, just a little bit. Number one, it looks great, makes it look festive. But, with all the sweet flavors going on, and believe me, there's a ton of sweetness here. The peppers, the onions, the pastries. That's why we have the salty element in the anchovies. We're gonna add one last bitter element in our black olives, and then we're gonna eat this baby. You know my passion for an oil-cured olive knows no bounds. You just gotta squeeze it, and that pit comes right out. And then I have these wonderful little pieces of olive, and I just wanna put them, these little pieces, just like a little spike of flavor. I'm gonna put 9 or 12 of them on here. And they are a classic element in this pissaladière. Super, super elegant. And now we're ready to slice and eat. When I'm entertaining, I will make this and I will let it sit. I'll finish it up an hour before guests arrive, and then I'll hop my shower or whatever. The fresher the better. You never want to refrigerate this. It'll get soggy. One of these is good for 6, 8, 9 guests if you have other things, because you're going to cut these 12 squares about 2 inches by 2 inches. Oh, can't wait to tuck into this baby. How does this pissaladière taste? Well, let's find out, shall we? So what I like to do is cut between the olives. I'm just gonna cut the corner here and show you. Do you see the dog? Leaping up behind me. Do you have something to say to America? Do you say, come here, up, up? Good boy, all right. Oh my gosh. Luca the Legato. Follow him at Luca the Legato. Really easy to follow. Do you like Pissaladiere? Do you know what he does love? He loves roasted peppers. You're welcome. They're good for dogs. He literally hears me cutting. His sister is down on the floor wondering, I can't pick you both up at the same time. But You want to know how this is? Absolutely delicious. Yeah, you'll love this, Luca. So delicious. Everyone in the Zimmern family loves it. Yeah, delicious. Oh my God. He almost ate my hand.